In this video I want to talk about a Czech custom which we call pálení čarodějnic, meaning burning of the witches, or simply čarodějnice, meaning witches. The night of April the 30th, which is called Filipojakubská noc in my country, meaning Saint Philip and Saint James Night, is often associated with witches, as it was believed that they gathered on this night to hold their Sabbats on prominent hills or mountains. I found out only recently that we most probably adapted this custom from Germanic culture, which is not surprising since our country was a part of Austro-Hungarian Empire for a long time, and our culture bears traces of that to this day. In Germanic culture, the custom is called Walpurgis Nacht, meaning Walpurgis Night. It is named after Saint Walpurga, an 8th century nun who was canonized on May 1st. Even though this custom originated in Germanic culture, I always felt that it fits into our Slavic culture really well, because we have witch-like folk creatures like Ježí Baba or Baba Yaga. And when I was researching the topic for this video, I found out that the place most famously connected with Walpurgis Night in Germany is apparently Brocken Mountain, also known as Blocksberg. German Wiki says that the legends about witch gatherings taking place at locations like Blocksberg are said to have originated in Slavic culture. When I read this, I remembered Disney's Fantasia and the night on Bald Mountain featuring the Slavic god Chernobog. This scene was inspired by an ancient Russian legend about a witch's Sabbath that took place on the night of St. John's Eve, on Lysá Hora, meaning Bald Mountain. Granted, this legend is centered around St. John's Eve, which is in June, but there were many magical nights which were suitable for witches' Sabbath during the year, and Walpurgis Night is certainly one of them. So I can believe that the concept of witches' Sabbath held on prominent mountain originated in Slavic culture, but I can't confirm that, so take it with a grain of salt. By the way, if you've played The Witcher 3, you probably remember the quest where you have to fight crones playing as Ciri and Imlerith playing as Geralt. The quest takes place during a Sabbath on Bald Mountain, so that's clearly inspired by the legend I was talking about. But back to Walpurgis Night. It inspired many literary works. Through Goethe's tragic play Faust, which includes a scene of Walpurgis Night Sabbath, the popularity of witches on the Brocken was significantly increased, and it became known as a witches' mountain outside of Germany as well. After that, the myth of witches' meetings on the Blocksberg was popularized in a friendly interpretation through children's books, such as The Little Witch by Ottfried Preussler or the radio play series Bibi Blocksberg, which was adapted into a cartoon. The Little Witch is pretty well known in the Czech Republic as well, because it was adapted into a Czech animated cartoon show in 1984. And I loved it as a kid, because there are many creepy moments throughout it. I know that there is also a German live-action adaptation, but I unfortunately haven't had the chance to watch it yet. The story of the Little Witch is as follows. Together with her talking raven Abraxas, the Little Witch lives in a tiny warped house in the woods. Her biggest dream is to fly around Blocksberg together with all the great witches. But one Walpurgis night, when she tries to sneak to the Sabbath and join the other witches without permission, she gets caught, and as punishment the witches burn her broom, but promise her that she will be allowed to participate at the next Walpurgis Night Sabbath if she has become a good witch until then. Over 1 year, the Little Witch tries her best to do good, help people in need, punish villains, save animals. She even makes new friends. When she comes before the Witch Council again, to show what a good witch she has become, it becomes clear that in their opinion, a good witch has to be good at being evil. The council plans on punishing her with the chore to collect firewood for the Walpurgis Night pyre. But the Little Witch gets her revenge instead by casting a spell on the Great Witches and taking their spellbooks and brooms away, therefore rendering them powerless. She uses the books and brooms to make her own Walpurgis Night pyre. In our country we have our own version of Brocken. It's called Petrovi Kameny, and there were actual witch trials in this area during the 17th century, but they were rare in Czech lands. The only region significantly affected was Jesenicko and Šumpersko, with a predominant German population. Hence the superstitious fear of witches was spread in this area. During the 17th century, about 200 people were burned at stake here. The case of Jindřich Boblik of Edelstadt is well known. He, like several other people, abused his position as a secular judge and by torture forced confessions of fabricated crimes out of locals. They were accused of witchcraft and according to Boblik, they were supposed to gather for their sabbats at the hill called Petrovy Kameny. The Dean of Šumperk, Christoph Alois Lautner, spoke as a representative of the church in defense of the victims, but he himself unfortunately ended up being burned at the stake eventually, because he was betrayed by his superiors, and even the Pope himself condemned him. These trials were also depicted in the famous historical novel by Václav Kaplický, Kladivo na čarodějnice. The name of the novel means Hammer of Witches and is inspired by the medieval German treatise Malleus Maleficarum. The novel Kladivo na čarodějnice was adapted into a movie of the same name. So the belief in witch sabbats and the subsequent witch trials is probably what inspired the German custom of Walpurgis Night and Czech custom of burning of the witches. The custom itself is pretty straightforward. There is a big pyre with a straw effigy of a witch on top, and the whole thing is set on fire when the town or village community gathers around in the evening. Part of this custom in our country was also throwing old flaming broomsticks in the air, and these represented the flying witches. The whole custom of burning of the witches is mentioned in a very famous Czech novel by Božena Němcová called Babička, which means the grandmother. It says that when people are throwing burning brooms in the air, you shouldn't point your finger at them, because the witch could have struck you down. Another part of the custom was also jumping over the fire. One last thing I want to bring up is something I've mentioned several times already on this channel, but in the Witcher books and especially Time of Contempt, there are few references to a custom where villagers burn a straw effigy of Falka, which sounds pretty similar to this custom and the custom of burning and drowning of the effigy of Morana, which I've explained in a recent video as well. I always thought that the mix of these two customs was the inspiration for the custom of burning an effigy of Falka. So that's everything I have about this custom. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments and see you in another video.